So let's talk about why we're never going to run out of oil. So think about this. Oftentimes the claim is that, this is what you'll see in Waterworld or Mad Max or any other sort of post-apocalyptic movie, is that in effect there's going to be some people who have the last few barrels of oil, and they're going to refine them, and they're going to turn them into gasoline, which they're going to then put into muscle cars, and they're going to go rearing across the Badlands in a fit of dust, and that's going to burn up all of our oil. But let's stop for a moment and move away from the movie, or maybe even into the movie. Let's imagine that you have that last barrel of oil. You're sitting there, whether it's in Waterworld or in Mad Max Fury Road, or maybe not those situations. Maybe we think about our society. As oil becomes scarcer and harder to extract, if that happens, there's no guarantee that it will, but if that happens, what would the result be? Well, we would expect the price to go up. And the price in the future being higher than what it is in the present will cause people in the present to say, you know what, I bet the price of oil is going to go up in the future. And so I will start selling a contract in the future, buy oil in the present, and contract to sell it in the future. Now, people say, yeah, but eventually people are going to use that oil. And I say, well, I'm not so sure. So let's think about if you had the last barrel of oil. What would you do with it? People say, I'd sell it to somebody. Okay, who would you sell it to? Who do you think has the highest valuation for that barrel of oil? Now again, you and I may not know this because there are people out there who are specialized in this. But I'm willing to bet that if you gave me the last barrel of oil, or if I was going to sell it to somebody, the person who would buy it from me would be the person who would say, you know what, I bet people would be willing to see this stuff. This black stuff that we used to power all of our vehicles with, and that we used to make a lot of our materials out of, and our whiteboards and our markers, we used to use this oil for all this stuff, and we used to power all vehicles with it. Obviously, we don't anymore because what's happened? It's become prohibitively expensive to do so. We received information and incentives to act on that information that we should go ahead and find substitutes. That's what increasing prices do. So we don't use it anymore to power our cars or our airplanes or to build things out of. But you know what? I bet people would be willing, if I stuck this in a room and charged people to come see it, I bet they'd be willing to pay. And I think that's true. In effect, we will never run out of oil. But wait, aren't we eventually going to stop running our vehicles on it? Yes, we will. Are we going to stop eventually making our markers out of it? Yeah, we will. But we'll still have oil around. Actually, I suspect that it's going to happen well before the last barrel of oil. It's going to be similar to coal. As it's clear right now, the price of coal has actually fallen so much because people have actually gone and found substitutes for other things. It doesn't make sense to extract what coal we have from the ground. So that West Virginia has a lot of coal. West Virginia is almost certainly going to end this millennia and the next millennia and the one after that with coal still in the ground. And that's almost certainly what's also going to happen with oil. And the reason, of course, is entrepreneurs. The fact that future generations have a voice in the present through markets and through entrepreneurs. Is that because these entrepreneurs care about the people in the future? No, they might. But there's no expectation or requirement that they do so. All the entrepreneurs have to care about is their benefit and their cost. And if we have rules in place that cause them to take into account the benefits of their actions to others, they're going to take those benefits into account. And if we have rules in place that cause them to take into account the cost of their actions to others, they're going to take those into account as well. So another example of this is the bison. Now, you may know, or you may have heard, that in the 1800s, the federal government and many people actually wanted to get rid of the bison. There was a bounty on them. Turns out they were just a really bad converter of the valuable resource in Middle America, and that valuable resource is grass. Bison were a bad way, or an overly costly way to convert grass into meat in Chicago or other major areas. And so the federal government was actively trying to get rid of the bison. They're exterminating them, paying people to get rid of them. Similar thing with wolves and other stuff. And yet we still have bison today. We have some large herds of bison, whether in Yellowstone Park or down in Badlands or some areas. Ted Turner's ranch has a bunch of bison on it. So where did those bison come from? Well, at least part of them came from a fellow who looked at the bison that were getting slaughtered off and he went, you know what? These are some pretty majestic animals. I wonder, I bet people in the future will be willing to pay for these. And he basically, it turns out bison, unlike cattle, you can't trail them. Cattle, you can kind of point them in one direction. You get a couple people on horses behind them, and you can trail cattle. Bison don't do that. Bison don't trail. And so if you're going to move bison alive, rather than trailing them, rather than them walking, you're going to have to stick them in crates and stick them on the back of wagons. And that's what this guy did. He stuck a bunch of bison in a bunch of crates, shipped them up to Canada, built really strong, really tall fences, and let them breed and kept them going. And that actually is the major source of most of our bison herds in this country today, and certainly a fair number of them. I don't know the exact proportion. Now, this fellow was thinking about future generations. And he might have cared about future generations. He might have said, look, these are majestic animals. And they really are. They're majestic animals that future generations should have a right to observe. But it also may have been that he just said, screw it. I bet these are a valuable commodity, and I don't care a thing about bison, and I don't care about a thing about the future generation, and yet he still behaved as though he cared about people. Again, this is a theme we've already talked about before, the millions and millions of people who were necessary for you to get your breakfast behaved as though they cared about you, whether or not they did.